Only had a couple drinks last night and a few good hits from an amber pipe, but I must admit I had a few white lines and I don't know what all happened. I woke up in the noontime light with a pounding head shining on my eye, and I don't know how and I don't know why, but it feels like fierce abandon. All working on a building out of hand-hewn brimstone. Working on a building and I'm building on it all alone. Well, there ain't nobody in my room tonight. Good night, honey. Honey, sleep tight. Ma, I swear I'm doing alright. When the evening comes around, I swear to God. I say, 'cause he ain't no count. Anyway, I've been rambling around and led astray by the paths that I've been choosing. Cutting paths like a forest fire, pupils wider and backhoe tires. Throwing my money on a funeral pyre, but it sure feels good abusing. All working on a building out of hand-hewn brimstone. Working on a building and I'm building on it all alone. Well, there ain't nobody in my room tonight. Good night, honey. Honey, sleep tight. Ma, I swear I'm doing alright. When the evening comes around, I swear to God. Band's too loud for their Bible thumping. It feels too good to not count for something. Big sandy rocks flood through the roll. Goddamn fire in the hole. Look out, baby, I'm bound to blow. I'm bound to blow a gasket. Damn good gig, good damn crowd. Good God, for crying out loud. Coming off stage, I was mighty proud. Man, I don't know what all happened. All working on a building out of hand-hewn brimstone. Working on a building and I'm building on it all alone. Well, there ain't nobody in my room tonight. Good night, honey. Honey, sleep tight. Ma, I swear I'm doing alright. When the evening comes around, I swear to God. I swear to God.
We were sitting on the front porch with the weather rolling in, laughing louder than the big south wind. You ran out to roll your window
just 18, full of fire and gasoline. He was lean and mean and they called him Texas. He went off to war, to a far and distant shore. He'd never left his home before. He was from Texas. As they stormed that beach one foggy summer day, he said, if I don't make it back, promise me one thing. Take me home if I die. When I'm gone, don't you cry. Find some shade right beside a live oak tree. Sing those old songs of faith. I'll fly away, amazing grace. And you find comfort knowing that my soul found peace. And you can bury me beneath the deep blue skies of Texas. Just 18, prettiest thing he'd ever seen, like a real life beauty queen, and someday she'd be his wife. But for the next 4 years, she fought back her tears, while he fought back his fears, fighting for his life. And in his darkest hours, her love would bring him a light. He would read her letters, and he would pray at night. Take me home if I die. When I'm gone, don't you cry. Find some shade right beside a live oak tree. Sing those old songs of faith. I'll fly away, amazing grace. May you find comfort knowing that my soul found peace. And you can bury me beneath the deep blue skies of Texas. He always said the real heroes never made it back home. And though the war was long over, you know for him it still lived on. And it still lives on. When he was 83, still full of fire and gasoline, he was still lean and mean, and they still called him Texas. And on the day he died, she was right there by his side. She held his hand as she softly sang his lullaby. Take me home if I die. When I'm gone, don't you cry. Find some shade right beside a live oak tree. Sing those old songs of faith. I'll fly away, amazing grace. May you find comfort knowing that my soul found peace. And you can bury me. You can bury me. You can bury me beneath the deep blue skies of Texas.
Kids, I don't really know what you guys are going to think of this. It's maybe a bit off the wall, fictional. So you may not like it, but you'll find it amusing, at least.
tailgate in a parking lot. We bumped down dirt roads and jacked up trucks, far from the bars and smoky nightclubs. We do it in a field, rocking all night till the sun comes up. We got 100 blue cans sitting on ice in the back of my truck, and George Strait blaring in a Chevrolet. We open up the doors wide and let it play. We do it in a field, rocking all night till the sun comes up. This old truck hood makes a pretty good scene. Got my feet on the bumper, sipping on a drink. And not too long, we'll take it down to the creek. The ice cold water will set you free. We do it in a field, rocking all night till the sun comes up. We got 100 blue cans sitting on ice in the back of my truck, and George Strait blaring in a Chevrolet. We open up the doors wide and let it play. We do it in a field, rocking all night till the sun comes up. Yeah, my baby looks good in her little tank top. About 2 a.m. we go sneaking off. We got a spot beneath a cottonwood tree, and she knows what she's gonna do to me. We do it in a field, rocking all night till the sun comes up. We got 100 blue cans sitting on ice in the back of my truck. Yeah, we do it in a field, rocking all night till the sun comes up. We got 100 blue cans sitting on ice in the back of my pickup truck. George Strait blaring in a Chevrolet. We open up the doors wide and let it play. We do it in a field, rocking all night till the sun comes up. Yeah. Whoa. Whoa. We do it in a field. Yeah, we do it in a field, rocking all night till the sun comes up.
Sands of time, they flow so slow. I catch hell from everyone I know. I'm so tired of being alone, so I get drunk and I just stay home. Looking in the mirror, I get lost. Think about life's choices and the cost. I wish I could stop and catch my air. Whoever said that life was fair? Now it's been a long 25 years, living life with all these fears. I'm holding on for a better day. Pray the sun will come and stay and shine on me, shine on me. Never shines on me. so hot, I'm so confused. Broken down, my soul's been used. I know there won't be an excuse, but sometimes you gotta cut the pain loose. It's been a long 25 years, living life with all these fears. I'm holding on for a better day. Pray the sun will come and stay and shine on me, shine on me. Won't you shine on me? I know you won't understand. All I can do is all I can. I'm so weak when I need to be strong. It won't be long before you find me gone. It's been a long 25 years, living life with all these fears. I'm holding on for a better day. Pray the sun will come and stay and shine on me, shine on me, and just shine on me, shine on me.
It all together, I always come unwound. She's cool, calm, and collected. I wanna paint the town. She's like a Sunday morning, I'm a dance all Saturday night. She's like a stained glass window, I'm a Lone Star neon light. She has another side that no one sees but me. She is the only one that brings me to my knees. There's something about Sinatra and a bottle of Chardonnay. Without a single word, she takes my breath away. When she gets that look in her eyes, when she gets that want you, need to love you right now kind of look in her eyes. She's always looking so fine that I can't believe mine. And when those stars align, just add a little white wine and moonlight, and that girl's off the hook. When she's good, but even better when she gets that look. sparkles like a diamond, she twinkles like a star. She's like a ray of sunshine that always melts my heart. And when I'm feeling empty, her love makes me whole, just like a country breeze that soothes my weary soul. When she gets that look in her eyes, when she gets that want you, need to, love you right now kind of look in her eyes. She's always looking so fine that I can't believe mine. And when those stars align, just add a little white wine and moonlight, and that girl's off the hook. When she's good, but even better when she gets that slow dancing, romancing. She's up to something, wearing nothing but her beautiful smile. She's up to something, wearing nothing but a beautiful smile. When she gets that look in her eyes, when she gets that want you, need to, love you right now kind of look in her eyes. She's always looking so fine that I can't believe mine. And when those stars align, just add a little white wine and moonlight, and that girl's off the hook. When she's good, but even better when she gets that look. When she's good, but even better when she gets that look. There's something about Sinatra in a bottle of Chardonnay. Without a single word, she takes my breath away. She's like a Sunday morning, I'm a Saturday night. She's like a stained glass window, I'm neon.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program will begin momentarily. We'd appreciate it if everybody took their seats. Thank you.
I've been a lover, I've been a father, I've been a brother, and I've been a son. I've been a preacher, I've been a sinner. If you can name it, I've probably been one. I'm strong for the struggle, constantly
007 at the age of 9, hiding in the back seat of my brother's brand new Jeep. There were girls dancing in the beds of trucks, at least the ones that weren't getting stuck. Coolers, cans, and cutoffs were all new to me. Well, that was then, but now I'm grown. Where we went that night, I still go when the weekend rolls around. I'll be getting down, getting loud, getting some, getting high up under the moonlight. It's a bring your own booze contribution. God-fearing good old boys, good old girls, getting backwards in a backwoods world. Sunday morning we'll have a get right reunion. Oh, but tonight it's on past the jar around. Get so far gone we come unwound. We ain't lost, we can be found. Have a dirt bro communion. Whoa, dirt bro communion. Swear I got my first moonshine kiss. I could taste the cinnamon on her lips in the front seat of my brother's old hand-me-down Jeep, where I was baptized in rock and roll. Our country roots run deep in my soul. We hold one high every single time Petty sets us free. Yeah, we're getting down, getting loud, getting some, getting high up under the moonlight. It's a bring your own booze contribution. God-fearing good old boys, good old girls, getting backwards in a backwoods world. Sunday morning we'll have a get right reunion. Oh, but tonight it's on past the jar around. Get so far gone we come unwound. We ain't lost, we can be found. Have a dirt bro communion. Whoa, dirt bro communion. It's who we are, it's what we do. We all come from miles around. Just to do a little getting down, getting loud, getting some, getting high up under the moonlight. It's a bring your own booze contribution. God-fearing good old boys, good old girls, getting backwards in a backwoods world. Sunday morning we'll have a get right reunion. Oh, but tonight it's on past the jar around. Get so far gone we come unwound. We ain't lost, we can be found. Have a dirt bro communion. Dirt bro communion. Oh, dirt bro communion.
First pub we could stagger to was 12 steps from the plane. A virgin flight to Shannontown the day it didn't rain. The laughing eyes of Ireland, sparkling blue and green, with hair as black as Guinness Stout and barely 17. We're back out on the cobblestones, whiskey drunk and high again, liquored up and gearing up for 7 nights in Ireland. The corner booth is waiting for the session to begin. It's quiet as a mother's prayer till we all stumble in. And it's 50 happy voices mixed with whistles made of tin. And a piper man is blowing like the North Atlantic wind. And Erin Island Beauty is sawing on the violin. I wonder will she miss me after 7 nights in Ireland.
Folks, whoa, sorry. Don't know the power of my own microphone. If everyone would take their seats and get settled in, we're about ready to start the program. My name is Matt Brooks. I'm the National Executive Director of the Republican Jewish Coalition. It is great to be with all of you in Houston today. As you know, we are on the eve of an incredible midterm election for us as a party and as a country, because the stakes what is at stake in this election will have a profound impact on the future direction of our country. And there is no question that we need to get control of the Senate back, and we need to get our majority in the House back. And we all thought, sure, give it up. Come on. We need to fire Chuck Schumer and fire Nancy Pelosi in November. And the way we're going to do that is through events like this, and why it's so important that all of you are here tonight, because we all have a role to play in the outcome of this election. We all have an opportunity to make a difference. And the reality is that the Democrats are going to pour as much as they can into Texas to defeat Governor Abbott and some of our House candidates, and some of the key Senate races across the country and the House races in which the balance of power. The Democrats are going to come barreling down, and we need to be there. We talked the summer was all about the conversation about how there's going to be a red wave. And I think we're going to have a really, really great election, but I don't think it's the kind of election that we can take for granted. Confidence breeds complacency, and none of us should be able to be complacent as we head into this election. The stakes are just too high. And while we have an opportunity at the federal level, we also have an opportunity at the local level to make a difference. And the one thing that we all have to make sure is that the incredible governor of the great state of Texas, Governor Abbott, is reelected so that he can continue to do the common sense leadership that the rest of the country is watching. I live in Washington, D.C. It absolutely makes me laugh. And watching what happens in Chicago and what's happening in New York City, that the governor's sending a couple busloads of folks as tens of thousands of people, and he's sending a couple busloads to these big cities, these places where they want to have sanctuary cities, where they don't want ICE coming in and they want to welcome everybody. They want to welcome everybody until the buses start showing up. And now it's a national crisis, that 3 buses drove into New York City with some illegal immigrants. And it highlights the hypocrisy. And this is the kind of leadership that this governor has shown consistently throughout his time. And we all know what a fraud and a charlatan Beto O'Rourke is. And we need to send this guy packing once and for all. So we're super excited about the program tonight. You're going to hear not just from the governor, but from Ambassador Nikki Haley, who is an incredible rock star in her own. Also a former governor, so she understands the issues that affect us at the state and local levels as well as federally. So I think it's going to be a really, really engaging and informative program this evening. Now, there's a couple of folks who I want to recognize who are here. First of all, she's not able to attend, but I wanted to thank Barbara Marcus, our chairwoman, chapter leader here. So does a great job. Thank you, Barbara. Cindy Siegel, who I saw outside before, who's the Harris County GOP chair. Thank you. The once and future Congressman Wesley Hunt is here back in the back. Congressman. And the Consul General of Israel to the southwest, Livia Link Raviv, is here, right up there. Shalom. So without further ado, let me just again leave you with the fact, leave here, be energized, roll up your sleeves. We've got a lot of work to do, and I can assure you that the Republican Jewish Coalition, along with the Harris County GOP and all of us in the party, are absolutely committed to getting rid of Nancy Pelosi, getting rid of Chuck Schumer, and making sure that Governor Abbott stays as governor of the great state of Texas. So allow me to bring them all up to the stage, if I may. We have Fred Zeidman, one of the national board members of the Republican Jewish Coalition, who's going to be moderating our town hall this evening. You all know Fred. And I'll also welcome Governor Abbott to come on up. And an incredible Texas welcome for the amazing Ambassador Nikki Haley.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You got this? I think they wanted you.
In this one?
Matt, I want you to look at this room. Let me tell you, back when I got started with this, I think there were 3 Jewish Republicans in the state of Texas. Gary Polland, Philip Aronoff, and me. And I will tell you, I embarrass Philip every time I see him because he's the one that told me about this Republican-Jewish coalition. And I truly believe that the total membership of the Republican-Jewish coalition when Matt became executive director was smaller than the number of people in this room. And we now have built a national organization supportive of everybody in this room. So
It's a beautiful room. It's a beautiful room.
it took a while. The folks to my left obviously need absolutely no introduction, but instead I'm going to, since Matt gave me the mic, and if he won't pull it out of my hands, I'm going to share 2 personal stories about these 2 folks to show you that there is no one in this country that is more devoted to the state of Israel than these 2. Let me just tell you maybe it was a year ago, Governor, I got a call about 10 o'clock on a Saturday night from Rabbi Jerry Myers at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. And he said, I need a favor. I said, sure, whatever you want. He said, the governor's opponent in the primary, Alan West, who was also state chairman, had put up on the Texas State website an app, whatever, I'm technologically handicapped tremendously, so I don't even know what you call it, but, and it's the one that all of the terrorists were using, including the one from prison that the man that committed the killings at the synagogue. And he said, you got to do something about this. Nobody understood exactly who controlled all of that, and he presumed the governor did, so he said, you got to do something about it. Well, it was 11 o'clock on Saturday night, and I didn't think it was appropriate to call you, but I called Dave Carney, and I said, Dave, we got a real big problem, and this guy's done this for one reason and one reason only, because the rest of the country's blaming the governor. So let me tell you that at 9 o'clock that Monday morning, there was a major press conference in Austin, and the governor had Craig Goldman on one side, and I can't remember his name, I ought to be able to, but Phil King, who is evangelical and probably the most pro-Israel non-Jew there. And he created this commission. He demanded that that be taken down. Israel has no better friend in any of the governor's mansions, if you will, than Governor Greg Abbott. So, Governor, thank you. And Ambassador Haley, who I met years and years and years ago, it can't be that many, I better cut the years. You're so much younger than me, but we met when she was running for governor of South Carolina. And we met at that time and struck up a friendship. It has gone on forever. But there was an event, was it yours or was it Ambassador Danon's? It was at his apartment, but I don't remember who it was for. At any rate, Danny.
It was his event.
It was his event. The ambassador got up and he said, every morning I wake up and Nikki Haley and I walk into the United Nations and fight every other country in the world. So we all know what she did for Israel, what she continues to do for Israel, and what she will continue to do for Israel. So, and I am beyond proud to be a part of that. So, let me get into questions, if I may. And as I told them, I'm going to be the batting practice pitcher here. I'm just going to throw 80-mile-an-hour fastballs down the middle and let them take it from there. But, Governor, during the summer of 2020, your opponent pandered to the defund the police extremists by calling for defunding line items that have over-militarized our police. Do you think that the bad guys are scaling back any of their capability, and what's at stake? Look, this decision, this election is going to be all about that. And so let me ask you, if I may, to give us your thoughts on that.
Sure, but first I want to thank the RJC for hosting this fabulous event. And the Harris County GOP for being here and showing out. Both will help us crush Beto this November.
All right.
And one of the reasons why we will crush him is because of the idiotic stances that he took when he ran for president of the United States. And he talked about things like supporting defunding the police. You know, it's outrageous that this ideology occurred. It originated seemingly in Minneapolis. Then you saw it in Portland and Seattle and Chicago and New York. And wherever you've seen any attempt to defund the police, you see the same thing. You see lawlessness. You see crime. Think of what you've seen on the TV screen when you see these smash and grab operations at these stores that are being closed down because people just walk in and steal whatever they want to steal. And so to think that someone is running for governor of the state of Texas who has supported defunding the police, that should be disqualifying unto itself. But here's the deal. In Texas, you all know I'm about to tell you, I assume you live in the greater Houston area. You know, there always is one city in Texas that has to be a little bit different. You know what I'm talking about is Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas, right.
And so we were shocked when we saw what Austin, Texas did. Austin, Texas did the exact same thing that these other cities did. Austin defunded their police by more than $100 million. And so Republicans got together this last session and we said, not on our watch will we allow law enforcement in Texas to be defunded because we support our law enforcement officers. So I signed a law that will defund any city that defunds their police.
And Ambassador, since you've had not only been working at ground level, but also at 10,000 feet, how can you give us your thoughts on how the Biden administration has been contributing to rising crime?
You know, they're looking the other way. I mean, here you have, as a governor, your job is to take care of their people. I mean, that's what Governor Abbott's doing every day, is to make sure he's taking care of his people. When you have the head of your country, the president, going along with defund the police, that's a problem. And he did that until he realized polling wasn't really good on that. But at the end of the day, what do the families want? Families want to know that their daughter can ride her bike down the street and they don't have to worry about her. They want to know that their son can go to work and not get carjacked. They want to know that if they have a small business, that they'll be protected and they're not going to have to constantly worry about a burglary. They want to know that law enforcement is going to come when they're called, and law enforcement wants to know that somebody's going to have their back. And so when you talk about this, and we're seeing these extreme things happening all over the country. In Pennsylvania, you've got a guy who's basically wanting to take guns away from law enforcement. Well, then they can't protect themselves and they can't protect you. So I will tell you, thank your lucky stars that you've got a governor with a spine, because Governor Abbott's not putting up with it. And it's governors like Governor Abbott that when they stand up and say, we're not going to fund a city that even participates in defund the police, it affects every other governor in the state. That's why strong governors matter. It's because when they use their courage and they use their might, every other governor gets a spine and starts to realize they can do it too. So thank you. You're doing great on that front.
Thanks. Both of you have had incredible records of job creation during your tenure. We're going to have a pretty low bar again, I think, coming up here by the end of this administration. Can each of you tell us what advice you would give Governor? In your case, we're still running, right? So in terms of incoming governors, about what they can do to increase jobs, to enhance business, which Texas has been marvelous at, and what Biden's policies have done to create this inflation. By the way, did you get a kick out of a press conference on the day that inflation hits all-time rates, right? And 1,400 points down on the Dow, I think, final. But address the economic impact of this administration's policies and the advice you would give to your successors, or in your case, to yourself, Governor, with regard to continuing this economic miracle that's been Texas.
Well, it's actually my information to my fellow Texans, because we need to understand what is at risk, because Texas is the economic engine of the United States of America. Since you all last re-elected me, Texas has created far more jobs than any other state in the United States of America. Ever since I've been governor, Texas has been ranked #1 as the best state for doing business. Texas has won the award that goes to the state that ranks #1 for economic development every year that I have been governor. And this past May, for the first time ever, Texas became home to more Fortune 500 company headquarters than any state in the United States of America. But just as important as those large businesses, remember this, and that is most businesses in Texas are small businesses. More than 90% are small businesses, and they hire more than half the employees in the state. So I'm proud to tell you, Texas also ranks #1 as the #1 state in America to start a small business. And what's meaningful about all of this is it leads to some great stats. One stat is that as we gather here at this wonderful location in Houston tonight, more Texans are getting a paycheck than ever before in the history of our great state. But there's another economic benefit to this, and that is also, as we gather here tonight, Texas is sitting on a record-setting budget surplus of $27 billion. That we need to spend in the next 2 years. And so how are we going to spend that? We'll address education. We will address health care. We will address public safety. But whose money is that? It is yours. It's the taxpayer money. And so here's what I say we do with at least half of that, which is $13.5 billion. We give that back to the taxpayers with the largest property tax cut in the history of the state of Texas. But in the way that we've done that, because I ask all these CEOs, why is it you're coming to the state of Texas? And they say, listen, you have no income tax. In fact, you all know because you helped do this. Nikki, we despise income taxes so much that we passed a constitutional amendment constitutionally banning an income tax in the state of Texas. We have a very reasonable regulatory environment. Let me give you an example of that, very, very tangible example. A regulatory environment that's reasonable is one that helps a business succeed. And if you go back in your mind, you'll remember that COVID first struck in February of 2020. In April of 2020, in the governor's office meeting me was Elon Musk. Elon Musk had a need for speed to build a new gigafactory, and he knew that he couldn't build it in California, so he wanted to come talk to me about building it in Texas. And I said, absolutely. And then beginning in June is when the project began. And it was just rough terrain, from grading the dirt to building a mile-long factory to rolling cars off that factory. It took only 18 months. And that's because we accelerated the permitting process. The fun thing is when Elon posted on Twitter, and he was holding up a picture of the cars rolling off of the factory floor, and he said, it took me 18 months to do this. He said 18 months in California, he would not have yet received his first permit. So we pride ourselves in moving at the speed of business in the Lone Star State.
You know, and I think you were blessed in Texas. But let me tell you what's happening in the country. You've got a country that is now $30 trillion in debt. We are having to borrow money just to make our interest payments. You've got your average family is spending $6,000 more this year than they spent last year. And I can tell you, when Michael and I were raising our kids, if we had to spend $6,000 more, do you know where we got that from? A credit card. And interest rates are going up. That's what's happening across America right now. 30% of Americans have started dipping into their savings accounts. 1 in 6 Americans can't pay their utility bill. Inflation is at an all-time high. And you have a president that's out there having a party telling you, no, it's not. It's the most ludicrous and tone-deaf thing. The idea that he had this massive event on the White House grounds. He honestly thinks if he tells you inflation is going down, you'll believe it. He thinks if he tells you that Putin is the reason for gas prices going up, that you'll believe it. The reason that we're seeing inflation is because he shut off our energy sector. We need to open up the energy sector. We should be exporting as much liquefied natural gas as we can. We need to stop all the wasteful spending. We need to go back to where we value a dollar and understand it's taxpayers' money that we're spending. And he needs to understand, if you actually want to stop inflation, quit throwing this money out. The idea that you would hire, I love Clemson football. The idea that you would hire enough IRS agents to fill Death Valley so that you can go after people to get money so that you can give tax credits for electric cars is probably the worst scenario you could imagine in terms of driving down inflation. So the only thing that's going to stop inflation is when you have good governors like Greg Abbott that are going to turn around and say, this is how it's done.
Thanks. You know, I will tell you, I mentioned to y'all that I was in North Dakota yesterday, and one of the stops was at the largest, I believe largest coal-fired plant in North Dakota. We were talking with the owner, and he mentioned that the week before, there apparently is a network where they can all talk to Gavin Newsom pretty quickly. But he said that Gavin Newsom put out an email or a text or whatever it is that said, we're going to go dark if somebody didn't get me some electricity in the next 15 minutes. 15 minutes. And of course, North Dakota provided it for him. But the issue is every state, Texas too, it has a great problem. Greg, nobody knows that better than you with what we went through here last year, but what should policymakers at both the state and federal levels do to ensure that we have an energy supply that we need to improve, well, to maintain, if not improve our quality of life and to not have to worry about that?
So two things about that. One, I'm going to talk about the grid, and two, talking about energy. So obviously, we went through a challenge, but you need to know what we have done to ensure that our grid will be resilient and reliable. I signed 14 laws that reformed the grid, winterized the grid, provides far more power generation than we've ever had before, as well as caps price spikes in the cost of electricity. And remember this, since the time that we signed those reforms, we went through this year what turned out to be the hottest July through April ever. We set 11 all-time new highs in the amount of power demand that was needed from the power grid. And we met it all with absolute ease without the power grid having any struggles whatsoever. And since I signed those reforms, no Texan has lost power because of the Texas power grid. The power grid, this past year we added about 18% more additional power. Over the next year we're going to add another about 18% and more additional power. We're growing more, we need more power, so we're going to have more power, more reliable than ever before. And let me make sure I throw this in. Before Texas went through deregulation, Texas had one of the higher electricity prices in the United States. After we went through deregulation and now have a free market, and after Winter Storm Uri, Texas has one of the lowest electricity prices in the United States and far lower than the national average. That makes it more affordable to live in Texas. One change that we are making to our power grid, we are making sure that we have what's called dispatchable power. What that means is you can flip a switch and it's going to be there. And in order to have dispatchable power, we are going to be blending in more and more reliable and clean burning natural gas that will keep the power on here in Texas. And that gets us back to both California as well as Washington, D.C., because in California, they went all renewable, just like they went all renewable in the European region. And we've seen both challenges in the European region as well as in California, when California actually had to start importing natural gas for them to be able to keep their power on. We're not going to suffer from that because we are insisting on adding far more natural gas. But the one thing that we need from the Biden administration, this is quite simple. One simple thing. It's called permits. He needs to permit the pipelines, permit the drilling and production, permit more of these gasoline operations. What Biden is doing is the exact opposite of that. As we speak right now, the Biden administration is using 2 air quality monitors located in New Mexico to try to hammer the Permian Basin in West Texas that will limit their ability to produce oil and gas or either drive up the cost of that oil and gas. So while on the one hand, Biden is trying to tell you that he's lowering the price of gas, on the other hand, he's taking action in the Permian Basin in the state of Texas that's going to increase the price of gas. He is giving Beto a run for his money for being a con man, talking out of both sides of his mouth.
Ambassador, you've been on the other side of this since you're not from a producing state. But I don't know what y'all did in South Carolina, but can you give us your thoughts on electricity capability and deliverability in the country and where it's been going under this administration?
Well, I think that, first of all, the main thing is I look at what's happening, and we have to, this is a time where Biden should be working so closely with our producers. Instead of vilifying them, he should be saying, what is it that you need from us? And he should be opening it up. It's amazing to me that he didn't want the Keystone Pipeline. That's actually the cleanest way to get it to go. You don't want it on rail. You don't want it on trucks. You want to be able to use the pipeline. And so the idea that he's vilified the good guys and then is trying to get the rest of the country to vilify the good guys, that's the problem. We need to pull back on the regulations. We need to give consistency and reason for producers to feel like they can invest again. And then we've got to make sure that the consumers know, look, we're going to do this, we're going to open it up. And our carbon emissions, we do better in America than most countries in the world. If you want to go and really affect the climate change situation, talk to India, talk to China. Those are the countries that have the problems. The U.S. has always been a good actor when it comes to energy.
Thanks. You know, I told the governor before that I have not missed the 10 o'clock news since he started sending those buses to New York City. I just love it.
I see a lot of potential bus drivers out there tonight.
Let me ask, you know, arguably for a lot of reasons, it could be the biggest problem, although maybe not yet recognized, facing the United States right now. So if I may, let me ask both of you to address the immigration issue. And again, I realize, Greg, you're at ground zero. But both of you, how do we address this problem, and how do we solve it, and what do we do to change the complexion of this?
This truly is the biggest crisis under the Biden administration. Remember, just 2 years ago, we had some of the lowest border crossings in decades. And it's because President Trump did 4 things. He built the border wall, he implemented the Title 42 policy, the Remain in Mexico policy, and he ended catch and release. And maybe most importantly, he said, no one's getting across the border illegally. And that is what secured the border. When Biden came in, he eliminated all of those measures, and as we get there today, so in federal government, they operate under a fiscal year that ends on September the 30th. And in this fiscal year that we're in right now, there will be more than 2 million people cross the border illegally, an all-time record. How many people live in Houston? What, about 3 or 4 million people? No, not how many people here, but no, here's my point. My point is we're adding at least a half of Houston, if not more than that, just in 1 year of people coming across the border illegally. And Texas has stepped up and done things that have never been done in the history of the country. From the time of George Washington to the time of Joe Biden, Texas is the first and the only state to build our own border wall to secure our country. We have the National Guard on the border, and they're turning back people who are trying to cross the border illegally. If they make it past them, you have the Texas Department of Public Safety who are arresting people and either jailing them or returning them back to the border. The people that we are busing, those are people, and it's most of them, they come across the border and go immediately to the Border Patrol and turn themselves in. The Border Patrol used to patrol the border. Now the Border Patrol processes paper, and they write up the paperwork, and then they dump off in local communities everybody whose paper they just processed. And that gave rise to the busing operation. I was in a room about this size with a big table, and it had all the county judges, all the sheriffs, all the police chiefs, and mayors and people like that. And they were letting me know what was going on the border, whether it be Eagle Pass, Del Rio, et cetera. And they were talking about how all these migrants were being dumped off in their communities, and they had no ability whatsoever to deal with it. And one mayor piped up and said that he was going to start busing them to San Antonio. And I said, don't do that. I have a better idea. I said, let me take charge of this. And the following week was when buses began going to Washington, D.C. So we had a reason to send them to Washington, D.C., and that is because this is a chaos and a crisis that Biden has caused on the border, and yet he has still failed to even go to the border and see what he did. And so I thought, by God, if Biden is not going to go to the border, we're going to take the border to Joe Biden and to Washington, D.C. And if you listen to Mayor Bowser, who is the mayor of Washington, D.C., you would literally think that her town is located not on the Potomac, but on the Rio Grande. Because She's declared a disaster. She's declared an emergency. She's called out the National Guard. She's begging the White House for more help. It's like, we're being overrun. Help us. And then it was kind of bizarre because Bowser was complaining. And then all of a sudden, Mayor Adams of New York, he started criticizing me for dumping off migrants in New York. But here's the deal. We were not sending them to New York. And we issued a public statement. No, we're only sending them to Washington, D.C. But the New York mayor continued to complain, and so I figured, you know what? If I'm going to get the criticism, by God, I'm going to get the credit for sending them to New York City. So we have these documents that the migrants have to sign before they get on the bus, and they're like in 4 or 5 different languages. But in New York, we explain you can go to New York City, which is a sanctuary city, where under their city ordinance, they provide free room and board to anybody there. And last week, Mayor Adams sent his team into the border area to find out what was going on, and they walked into a room about this side, filled with migrants and chairs that were getting ready to go somewhere, and someone asked them a question in front of Mayor Adams' staff that said, how many of you all want to go to New York City? Everybody's hand went up. You thought they were going to faint. And now, of course, we're sending them to Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago. Here's what this has done, and especially what happened in New York City. New York City is the world headquarters of media. And when this happened in New York City, the world media shined a spotlight on an issue that most of America had no idea was taking place. Only if you watched Fox News were you aware of what was going on. If you watched CNN or MSNBC or ABC, NBC, CBS, you had no idea what was going on the border. Now people are learning what's going on the border. Now Democrats are complaining as much as Republicans about what's going on the border. And it's time for the United States of America to step up and fix the problem and secure the border like the federal government requires the president to do. Two last quick factoids about this that you need to know about. And it shows what's going to happen. So, for one, there's been 81 people under the Biden administration who were on the terrorist watch list who've been apprehended coming across the border. And remember this, everybody comes across the border, pays money to the cartels to get across the border. You pay a lot more, if you're on the terrorist watch list, you pay a whole lot more not to be caught. So think how many people on the terrorist watch list successfully made it across the border and maybe roaming around Houston or maybe roaming around Washington or who knows where is dangerous. And that's why here's what's going to happen. What's going to happen is Republicans, they are going to win Congress this election year, and they are going to fire Nancy Pelosi. Then their second task is to impeach Secretary Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security. The third task is to refund Texas every penny that we've spent securing the federal border. And the fourth thing is to ensure that they do not send a budget to Joe Biden that does not have full funding for the Border Patrol, for ICE, for building the wall, and for securing our border.
You know, the reality is, if you took the number of illegal immigrants that have crossed the border since Biden took office, it would create the 7th largest city in America. Think about that. You had enough fentanyl cross the border in July that would kill every single American. And you look at the fact, every state's a border state now. All the kids are going into the schools, the adults are going into the hospitals, law enforcement's having to deal with this. We are a country of laws. The second we stop being a country of laws, we give up everything this country was founded on. The fabric of America is legal immigration. My parents came here. They put in the time, they put in the price, they came here legally. We take care of my parents. They're 87 and 89. There's not a time I sit down for dinner with my mom where she says, are those people still crossing the border? Legal immigrants are more offended than anyone about what's happening. And I will tell you, it's really important that you know legal immigrants are more patriotic than a lot of the leftist Americans these days. Trump had a terrible border situation. And when he had a bad border situation, I was on the ground in Honduras and Guatemala because that's where a lot of them were coming from, in El Salvador at the time. And what we knew is the reason they were coming was because of gangs and drugs and trafficking. So we went down there, talked with the officials, and basically said, okay, look, we'll have military train you on how to deal with your gangs. We put intelligence boats on the water to stop the drugs from going by. But we said we will only do this if you keep everyone here and they process from here. The second that changes, we're stopping everything. The remain in Mexico policy was if you had them remain in Mexico, a lot of people didn't want to come because they knew how dangerous Mexico was. And then you go and you had the catch and release, all of that stopped. When you go and actually create a border, people don't want to come. But it was very telling when Biden came into office, when they started showing up with Biden t-shirts, they've seen a green flag. And until we show a red flag, and if that means you defund every country that's sending people, you defund every country that's sending people.
I want to follow up on one thing that Nikki said, which is so true, and that is legal immigrants are offended by the illegal immigration. In addition to that, for all those who are waiting to come in legally, they get pushed further behind the line. But it's because those legal immigrants who are offended, and because many of them live in these border counties that have always voted Democrat, let me tell you something. The border counties are going to turn red this November because of Biden's open border policies.
Both of you are aware that my priority and passion has always been for the safety and security of the state of Israel. If you look at the two folks on my left, no one has done more to help than these two. As a governor, economically, you have done so much, and I'd like you to address that. And Ambassador, as I said in my opening comment, I mean, there has never been an American ambassador at the United Nations that could carry Ambassador Nikki Haley's suitcase into the United Nations. She's been phenomenal. And when we were at Ambassador Danon's house that night, and he said, every morning I get with Nikki and we walk in and fight the rest of the world, we all know what he meant. So let me ask you, if you can, to address, and I mean, this is a really wide open question, but number one, this administration's relationship with Israel, the JCPOA, where that stands, and what your thoughts on signing it might be, and the economic effect. There's some amazing statistics, I know, Governor, with Texas too. So, Ambassador, since you did so much to protect the country, I'll ask you to go first.
So, you know, look, telling the truth at the UN there was nothing more meaningful that we could do at the United Nations than that, because there were so many lies about Israel, and it was bullying, it was abusive, it was wrong, and so I was proud to tell the truth. I was proud to call them out, and I was proud to try and make a change there. What I can tell you now that is the biggest concern is when you look at the Iran deal, go back to during the Trump administration. So, you know, the way it had happened, Obama passed the Iran deal without congressional approval. He just passed it through. gave literally, I said in the press, I said he gave a plane full of cash, and I got one of those 4 Pinocchios because it was multiple planes of cash. He sent planes of cash to Iran. All it did was fill their coffers so that they could have their terrorist tentacles go out. They started doing more, funding the Houthis in Yemen, funding Hezbollah in Lebanon, funding Hamas in Gaza. We saw them doing things in Syria. It had caused terror around the world. It really fueled their coffers. And so when it was time to get out of the Iran deal, what Congress did was they said, okay, well, every 90 days, a president that's serving has to decide whether it's still in America's best interest to stay in the Iran deal. So President Trump goes in the first 90 days. He talks about getting out of the Iran deal. His National Security Council tells him, no, you don't want to get out. You don't want to get out. And you could tell he was uncomfortable with it. So he signed it and he passed it along. He started asking more questions, and people, especially the Secretary of State at the time, was like, no, you don't want to get out. And I went to him and I said, if you will allow me, let me go to the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna that was managing the deal. Let me ask them the questions. Let me get you the answers and the information and come back, and I will make the case for you on why you can get out of the Iran deal. You can decide whether you want to do it or not, but I will make the case to the American public. So I go to Vienna to the IAEA, and I asked them, I said, okay, you do inspections of Iran, of any issues. We know a lot of the research is happening in the universities. How often are you inspecting the universities? We don't inspect the universities. Okay, well, we know a lot of the production's happening in the military installations. How long are you, how often do you inspect the military installations? We're not allowed to inspect the military installations. Okay, what do you inspect? They said, if we get a tip, then we give Iran 90 days, and then we go in and inspect. I came back, made the case, told the president it's actually his responsibility to get out of the Iran deal. He got out of the Iran deal, we depleted the coffers of Iran, and suddenly they couldn't do the terrorist activity. Now you've got Biden falling all over himself to get back into the Iran deal. Remember, a terrorist organization that says death to Israel, death to America every day. And we're not even allowed in the negotiating room. So the lead negotiator for the Iran deal for us, do you know who it is? Russia. We're allowing on one enemy to negotiate with another enemy for us. And the reality is, Iran is saying, I'm not getting back in the deal until you drop all the investigations. So if Biden agrees to this, all hell needs to be raised, because it's not a matter of if there's going to be a terrorist attack, it will be when there's a terrorist attack. The second thing I want you to know is Greg Abbott's opponent, Beto O'Rourke, boycotted the head of Israel when he went to go speak to Congress, did not vote to fund the Iron Dome, and was totally opposed to us moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. So when you look at someone like this, and you think about the national side, and then you look at the state side, one, it's a no-brainer that Greg Abbott's the right person to handle this. But secondly, it's also a reminder of the national security threats that are facing us. And this is bigger than Biden getting another win. This is about the safety of our country. And so when you think about the Iran deal, no Iran deal should be signed without Israel and the Arab countries involved in that negotiation, period.
Governor, there are a lot of countries in this world that you could have focused on economically. Israel has been such a priority to you in so many ways, and your understanding of the effect that it's got on us here by the creation of the commission here in Texas. I'd like you to share with us a little bit how all of this came to be and how you see this playing out.
Well, in part, as you know, I've taken several economic development trips to Israel, but let me tell you a quick story about my first trip to Israel. because when I arrived on my second day there, I got to meet with Netanyahu in his office, which is really kind of a humble office to be in. Exactly. It's small, and my wife and I were sitting with him at a very small table. And he said, "Governor, what's your biggest problem?" And I told him, and I said, "It's the border." And he said, "Governor, we have a very solid solution for border security in Israel." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "Is landmines." And I said, "I don't think I could do that." Who said why not? So anyway, one thing. So he says alligator. So if you go down to the Rio Grande River, you will see green signs that are put up saying "Warning: Alligators in the water." They're there. But at any rate, we're getting off topic here real quick. One thing that we have focused on is the economic connection between Texas and Israel. There are so many profound businesses in Israel, primarily in Tel Aviv, but in some other places that are innovative. Some are healthcare and medical arena, some are technology, some are next generation type issues. And we've been able to partner with those businesses and get them to come here and grow here and expand here. And it's good for their business operations, but it's also good for the state of Texas and our economy. But there's something else that we've done that I do want to point out. Because we jealously guard our relationship with Israel. We feel like we're in the same family. And we are offended by anybody who attacks that family relationship. So much so that we passed a law that will bar the state of Texas or any of its agencies from ever entering into a business agreement or a contract with any business that discriminates against Israel. If you discriminate against Israel, you're discriminating against Texas.
Thank you. I have been given the signal, so let me just say in closing, well, first of all, let me ask, Ambassador, anything else you would like to tell the folks here and Governor, and then I'll close.
You know, look, I am all over the country helping candidates get elected, House, Senate, and gubernatorial candidates. And what I'll tell you is anybody that's talking about a red wave, don't listen to them. Because what we're seeing right now is Republicans are being out fundraised. These are tight races. It's really getting down to the wire, but there is so much at stake. There's never been a more important time that we have good governors. Because you saw during COVID the difference between a governor who allowed their people to have freedoms and make their own decisions versus governors who didn't. You saw the ones that kept businesses open versus those that didn't. You saw those that opened up schools and those that didn't. Those that didn't require masks on our kids versus those that did. So governors matter. But I will tell you, everybody in this room, please go out and talk to your family and friends. Don't assume that they're registered. Don't assume that they know where to go vote. They're not going to tell you, but if you go and help them, you'd be surprised. And people vote who their friends and family vote for. So when you leave here, go email your list, go call everybody, tell them you're voting for Greg Abbott for governor. And make sure you vote up and down that ticket, because every one of these races matters. And I'm telling you, we're counting on you, Texas, because you guys get it. And at the end of the day, what I do hope is we have a great November. But also remember, winning in November is half the battle. Proving we deserve to be there is the more important half of the battle.
So, ditto what Nikki